Would you stay silent? Or let revenge speak for you? Welcome to the stories on Shattered Vengeance. Step into a world where love turns dangerous, revenge feels inevitable, and every story drags you deeper into the shadows of desire, betrayal, and the human heart. Let's begin today's story. Sunday dinner at the family estate had always been a tradition, but tonight felt different. More formal. More final. The mahogany dining room table was set with Mom's best china, and all three of my aunts were present. Aunt Margaret with her perpetually disapproving expression, Aunt Susan with her clipboard and color-coded organizational system, and Aunt Patricia who nodded approvingly at everything Dad said. "Emily," Dad began, setting down his coffee cup with the ceremonial weight of someone about to make an important announcement, "we need to discuss the living arrangements here at the house." I looked up from my dessert, already sensing where this conversation was headed. At 28, I'd been living in the family's sprawling Victorian mansion for 2 years since Mom passed away, ostensibly to help Dad with the upkeep and provide companionship in his grief. "What kind of discussion?" I asked carefully. Aunt Margaret leaned forward with the expression of someone who'd been planning this intervention for weeks. "Emily dear, your father isn't getting any younger. This house is far too large for 2 people to manage alone. Which is why," Dad continued, "we've decided it's time to make better use of the space. For the greater good of the family." The phrase sent a chill down my spine. In our family, greater good usually meant what's convenient for everyone except Emily. Aunt Susan consulted her clipboard with businesslike efficiency. "We've done a complete assessment of the house's room allocation. Currently you're occupying the master suite, the small sitting room, and you've converted the morning room into your office space." "Those are my rooms," I said quietly. "I've been living here for 2 years." "Of course they are, sweetheart," Aunt Patricia said in that soothing tone reserved for children and people having unreasonable reactions. "But now we need to think practically about family needs." Dad cleared his throat. "Margaret's youngest daughter is getting divorced. She needs a place to stay with the 2 children while she gets back on her feet. Susan's son just graduated college and needs somewhere affordable to live while he looks for work," Aunt Susan added, making notes on her clipboard. "And Patricia's daughter is pregnant with her 2nd child," Aunt Margaret finished triumphantly. "They need more space but can't afford a larger apartment right now." I looked around the table at their expectant faces, all so certain of their moral authority. "So you want to move 3 families into this house?" "It makes perfect sense," Dad said warmly, as if he were offering me a wonderful opportunity rather than evicting me from my own living space. "The house has 8 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 2 sitting rooms and that lovely sun porch. There's more than enough space if we organize it properly." Aunt Susan turned her clipboard toward me, revealing a detailed floor plan with room assignments written in her neat handwriting. "We've worked it all out. Margaret's daughter Christine gets the master suite since she has 2 children who need the connecting rooms. Patricia's daughter Amy gets the blue guest room and the nursery. Susan's son David gets the corner room with the built-in desk. And me?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "The servants' quarters in the attic have been completely renovated," Aunt Margaret said brightly. "Lovely slanted ceilings, very cozy. Perfect for someone with simple needs." "The servants' quarters." They wanted to move me to the servants' quarters in my own home. "It's actually quite charming up there," Patricia added encouragingly. "Very private, separate entrance, its own little bathroom. Like having your own apartment. Plus," Susan continued, consulting her clipboard again, "since you'll be the only single person without children, it makes sense for you to have the smallest space. Basic mathematics." Dad nodded approvingly. "The sitting room you've been using as an office can be converted into a playroom for the children. They need space to run around and you can work from your laptop anywhere." "What about my things?" I asked. "My furniture, my books, my office equipment?" "Storage unit," Margaret said decisively. "We've already researched prices. Very reasonable monthly rates. And since everyone will be contributing to household expenses," Susan added, "the storage fee can come out of the collective budget. Very fair." I stared at them in amazement. "You want me to pay to store my own furniture so you can move your children into my rooms?" "Our children," Dad corrected gently. "They're family, Emily. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good." The greater good. There it was again. Think about it logically, Margaret continued. Christine is a single mother working 2 jobs. Amy is pregnant and struggling financially. David just graduated and needs time to establish his career. You're single, stable, employed, you can adapt more easily than they can. Employed. Their polite way of acknowledging that I had a job while dismissing its importance. What about my home office? I asked. I work from home 3 days a week. I need professional space for video conferences. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. You can use the kitchen table when you need to take calls. Or the library corner. Very professional looking with all those books. The morning room has been my office for 2 years, I said. I have clients, scheduled meetings, specialized equipment. Emily, Dad said in his patient voice, you're being unnecessarily difficult about this. We're not asking you to leave. We're asking you to share. To be generous with family members who need help. Aunt Susan made another note on her clipboard. Actually, speaking of sharing, we'll need to establish a schedule for the kitchen and laundry facilities. With 4 families in the house, coordination will be essential. 4 families. I repeated. Christine and her children, Amy and her family, David and you and Dad, Margaret explained. Though really you and your father are more like one household since you're both single. My phone buzzed with an email notification. I glanced at it discreetly. A message from Hamilton and Associates Title Company with the subject line, Property Transfer Complete, Documentation Attached. Perfect timing. We've also worked out a fair division of household responsibilities, Susan continued, oblivious to my distraction. Christine will handle dinner preparation since she's an excellent cook. Amy will manage grocery shopping when she's feeling well enough. David will take care of yard work and general maintenance. And Emily will handle cleaning and laundry, Patricia concluded. Since she's the most available and doesn't have children to care for. I would become the live-in housekeeper for my own home. This is all very generous, I said slowly, opening the email on my phone, but I think there might be a small problem with your plan. Dad smiled indulgently. What kind of problem, sweetheart? Well, I said, scrolling through the legal documents that had just arrived in my inbox. It's hard to reorganize a house when you don't actually own it. The conversation paused. Margaret looked confused. Of course we own it, Dad said. This has been the family home for 40 years. Your mother and I bought it when we were first married. Actually, I said, turning my phone screen toward them, according to these documents from the title company, the house was transferred into my name this morning. Congratulations, you've just spent an hour planning to redistribute rooms in a house that belongs to me. The silence that followed was profound. Aunt Susan's pen stopped moving across her clipboard. That's impossible. I stood up and walked to Dad's side, showing him the official documents. Remember when you had financial troubles after Mom's medical bills? When the bank was threatening foreclosure? When I paid off the remaining mortgage balance and took care of all the back taxes? Dad's face had gone pale. Emily, we discussed this. You said it was a loan. I said I would handle it. I never said it was a loan. I scrolled to the next document. The house has been in my name for 18 months, Dad. I've been paying property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance costs, and utilities this entire time. Margaret snatched the phone from my hands, squinting at the legal text. This can't be legal. Parents don't just sign over family homes to their children. They do when they're facing foreclosure and their daughter offers to save the house by buying it from the bank, I said calmly. Dad signed the quitclaim deed himself. Patricia was staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. But we thought the house was still in your father's name. I asked Emily not to mention the ownership change, Dad admitted quietly. I was embarrassed about the financial situation. I didn't want the family to know how bad things had gotten. Susan's clipboard had fallen to the table. So when we were planning room assignments, you were planning to evict me from my own house and install me as an unpaid housekeeper for 3 families, I finished. Yes, that's exactly what you were doing. The weight of their presumption was finally sinking in. Emily, Margaret said desperately, we had no idea. If we'd known you owned the house, would it have changed anything? I asked. Would you have suddenly respected my living space? Would you have consulted me before making plans? Or would you have just found more creative ways to guilt me into giving up my rooms? None of them answered. Here's what's actually going to happen, I said, walking back to my seat. Christine can stay in the guest room for 1 month while she finds her own apartment. Amy can visit whenever she wants, but she and her family live in their own home. David can get a job and find roommates like every other recent graduate. But Emily, Dad protested, they need help. And I'll help them. With job search resources, references, even financial assistance if necessary. But I won't sacrifice my home to enable their dependence on family bailouts. I looked around at my aunt's shocked faces. You all assumed I was the family failure who could be easily manipulated because I live with Dad and work from home. You never asked about my career, my income, or my contributions to this household. What do you do? Susan asked weakly. I run a digital marketing consultancy. I work from home by choice, not necessity. I live here because I love this house and wanted to preserve it for the family, but that doesn't mean I'm available to be everyone's solution to their financial problems. Margaret was still staring at the ownership documents. So all this time you've been letting us think. I've been letting you reveal exactly how you see me, I said simply. Someone with no agency, no valuable contributions, and no right to refuse unreasonable demands from family. Dad reached across the table toward me. Emily, I'm sorry. We never meant to. You meant exactly what you said, Dad. You decided I was the family member whose needs mattered least, whose space was most expendable, and whose labor was most available. The ownership documents don't change what you believed about my worth. I gathered my things and stood up. Dinner was lovely. Thank you all for coming. Christine, let me know when you'd like to see the guest room. Everyone else, I'll see you at Christmas, assuming you can find time in your schedules to visit me in my own home. As I walked toward the stairs, Dad called after me. Emily, wait. Can we talk about this? I turned back to face them. My father and 3 aunts who'd spent the evening planning to exile me to servants' quarters while assigning me cleaning duties in a house I owned. Dad, we can absolutely talk. But next time, maybe we should start the conversation with, Emily, what do you think? Instead of, Emily, this is what you're going to do. 6 weeks later, Christine found a wonderful apartment closer to her children's school. David got a marketing job through one of my client connections. Amy and her husband worked out their space issues by converting their garage into a nursery. Dad and I had several long conversations about respect, assumptions, and the difference between helping family and being exploited by family. He still lives in the house, my house, but now he asks permission before making plans that affect my space. And every Sunday we still have family dinner. But now it's at my invitation in my dining room with my rules about who gets to make decisions about room assignments. The servants' quarters remain empty just the way I like them.